Shalom and all good wishes. Mazal Tov to Efrat Krauss on publishing a new book about Rabbi Hayyim David Halevy, who was really one of the great Gedolim of the modern period. Rabbi Halevy was a special person not only to his family, to his community, but to all of us worldwide who enjoyed studying and learned so much from him and his various books. I had the first time I came across Rabbi Halevy's work was in the early 1980s when I was giving a lecture in Evanston, Illinois, at the synagogue of my friend and colleague, Rabbi Michael Azos. In his bookshelf, he had a little volume of Aseh Harav. At that time, I did not know about Rabbi Halevy. I opened the book, and suddenly I realized I am in the presence of greatness. Here were teshuvot that were written with such clarity, brilliance, bringing not only the main sources, the halakhic sources, but with a sensitivity and an insight that I rarely have come across before. When I came back to New York after that experience of first reading Rabbi Halevy's Teshuvot, I had called my bookseller and said, please get me all the books by Rabbi Halevy. And I got as many as I could get and continued to buy them as soon as they came out. In the course of time, Baruch Hashem, I met Rabbi Halevy several times in Tel Aviv. I brought my son there. When my son got semicha, Rabbi Halevy gave him a blessing. It was very special. And I went on to publish a book also about Rabbi Halevy, and my son also wrote 4 of the chapters of that book. So we're very close to Rabbi Halevy in spirit. I was very pleased, in fact, that Rabbi Halevy comes from a family from Turkey, Turkish background, which my grandparents also came from Turkey. In fact, my grandparents only spoke Judeo-Spanish. And Rabbi Halevy represented the tradition of the Judeo-Spanish Chachamim going back the generations. He was a close student and an accompaniment of Assistant Rabbi Ben Zion Uziel, who is also one of my great spiritual heroes. And I myself grew up in Seattle, Washington, and my teacher, when I was a teenager, of our synagogue was Rabbi Avraham Shalem, who was a student of Rabbi Uziel and also an acquaintance of Rabbi Halevy. So I feel part of the Halevy family, at least spiritually. In the Jewish tradition, rabbinic tradition, and certainly among the Sephardim, we had different names for rabbis. One of them was Marbitz Torah. Marbitz Torah is a person who spreads the words of Torah, and that Rabbi Halevy did with great distinction. Through his books, through his lectures, through his shiurim, he was able to impact on many, many thousands of people, those who were close to Torah and those who were distant. He was able to reach out to so many people. But his unique quality, especially as seen in the Makor Hayyim set, is that he not only brought halacha, what to do and what not to do, but he presented it in a context of the tradition. He brought the biblical text. He brought the text, the sources from the Talmud, from the Midrashim, and from Kabbalah. And he put a spiritual context to all of the mitzvot, so that we didn't look at the mitzvot simply as what you should do and what you should not do, but why we should do them and how these mitzvot actually enhance our lives and the deeper meanings that underlie them. In terms of Marbitz Torah, Rabbi Halevy had his radio program, Aseh Harav. He published many, many books. He was certainly a very well-known orator and teacher. But he also had an extreme sensitivity. And I want to just refer to one teshuvah of his that had an impact on me. There was some years ago a strike in Israel among the Limudei Kodesh teachers. They felt they were not getting adequate pay. And many of the Gedolim in Israel were opposed to the religious teachers going on strike because there's nothing more important than teaching children Torah. Rabbi Halevy agreed, of course you should teach children Torah. But he made an interesting insight. No one has to be in a position of being a shaliach for parents to teach children if they're not receiving adequate compensation. The ultimate responsibility to teach Torah rests on parents, not on the teachers. And therefore, if the teachers are not satisfied that they're receiving a proper compensation, then let the parents teach the children. And if the parents aren't able to teach the children themselves and they want the teachers to teach, then they have to pay a proper compensation. This was a very keen insight that respects the need for people to study Torah and to teach children Torah, but also respects the rights of individual teachers to receive proper pay for their service. Another name besides Marbitz Torah that we use for our rabbis is Chacham. Chacham doesn't just mean to be smart or to be wise. It means sensitivity to the people's feelings. Some people, some poskim, some rabbis, when they're asked a halachic question, they first look in the books. What do the books say? Great poskim don't do it that way, in my humble opinion. They first look in your eye. Why are you asking me this question? How will my answer impact on your life? Then, after I have a sense of who the people are and what the situation is and what the ramifications of my decision will be, then I look at the books to see what is proper or not proper. Rabbi Halevy was that kind of chacham. He was able to feel the sensitivity of the kind of questions that were asked. When I would ask him questions, from time to time I had some big questions, as I was rabbi of a large congregation here in New York, and we had complicated questions. He would often ask me, first tell me what you think. Do your own homework first, which I think was very good advice. And then he would either agree or disagree. I was very happy when he agreed. And if I didn't agree, he would point out sources that I missed or didn't understand quite the way I should have. This was a great chacham. He was respectful of me and other chachamim, other rabbis who asked questions, but he also was able to give soft, gentle guidance. He was an anav, a sweet human being who believed in the chesed and kindness and understanding. There was another teshuvah that made a big impact on me. There was a certain simcha in a synagogue in Israel, and a family came, and one of the people that came was a young man who had been a soldier, who had been injured in battle and became blind, a poor young man. And the family wanted him to be called to the Torah. And the rabbi of that synagogue, it was a Sephardic synagogue, no, it's asur to call this boy to the Torah, this young man to the Torah, because a blind person is asur. The Shulchan Aruch says it's asur for a blind person to be called to the Torah because he can't read the text. The family was very upset. They finally caused a lot of distress for the family. And when Rabbi Halevy heard about this case, you could just, when you read this teshuvah, you could feel him crying for sympathy for this young man who suffered. He gave up his eyes for the people of Israel. He was a soldier. In his synagogue, where he normally prayed, the rabbi did give him aliyot. So why did this other rabbi stop him from being called to the Torah? So Rabbi Halevy pointed out that in fact the Shulchan Aruch does say a blind person shouldn't be called, but he also pointed out that there are many other sources that indicate that we do call a blind person to the Torah. And in fact, in this case, most of Sephardim follow the other poskim who say that a blind person can be called to the Torah. But the teshuvah not only reflects halachic wisdom and insight, but reflects a gentleness and a sweetness. And I hope that the rabbi who originally stopped the young man from being called to the Torah learned not just the halacha, but he learned a method of halacha that teaches sweetness, the racheha darchei noam. And another example of titles that we gave to our rabbis was chaver ha'ir. Chaver ha'ir generally means someone who's punctilious in observing the mitzvot. But in the case, in a more general sense, it means someone who cares about the needs of the whole public, who's not only concerned about his own dalat amot, but who cares about how the whole society functions. And Rabbi Halevy was chief rabbi, first in Rishon LeZion and then in Tel Aviv, and he had great public responsibilities. But one of the teshuvot that sticks in my mind is years ago there were demonstrations in Petach Tikva when a movie house decided to keep open on Friday nights. And there were protests and screamings and all kinds of sichsuch about it. So without going into all the details, the question came to Rabbi Halevy, what should we do? I mean, should we keep protesting? Should we stop protesting? Rabbi Halevy came to the conclusion that we did give the people warning that Shabbat is important and they should keep the movie house closed on Shabbat. However, it becomes counterproductive. When people are standing in front of the movie house shouting and screaming, they don't make people more religious. They don't make people more sensitive to the needs of Shabbat. On the contrary, the hachis, people are going to go to the movies who might not ordinarily have gone to the movies. And the policemen have to come, and the newsmen are going to come, and it causes more chilul Shabbat than otherwise. His point was, the way we win people over to Torah is not by yelling at them and calling them names and screaming them, not even through political manipulations. Rabbi Halevy believed the way to bring people close to Torah is persuasion, setting a proper example, caring for society with love, with gentleness and teaching them that the Torah stands for beauty, for gracefulness, for chesed, for kindness, for inclusivity, all these wonderful virtues that the Torah does stand for, and which should be reached out to the public at large. Rabbi Halevy served as a model of a Talmid Chacham, of a Marbis Torah, of a Chacham, and of a Chaver Ha'ir, whose greatness is already recognized by very, very many, but will continue to be, will increase in appreciation as the years go on. The more people study his work, the more impressed they're going to be with, here's a man who represents Torah at its finest. Efrat Krauss deserves much credit for the work that she's done, and I hope that her book will bring many, many more people to Torah, and to the Torah, especially of Rabbi Chaim David Halevy. I send my words of praise to the author, to the family of Rabbi Halevy, the whole community who supported him over all the years, and to all of us who study. Rabbi Halevy once told me that his yeshivat are his books, and all of us throughout the world who study his books are members of his yeshiva. I'm proud and pleased to be one of those students of his yeshiva. I respected him tremendously. I learned from him, and I know that many, many, many thousands and thousands of people have learned from him and will continue to learn from him in the years ahead. Chazak, chazak, all the best. Mazal tov.